Tranquil Tales. Four Important Rules from the Ladies Book of Etiquette and Manual of Politeness by Florence Hartley, written in 1860. Order is heaven's first law. 1. A suitable place for everything and everything in its place. 2. A proper time for everything and everything done in its time. 3. A distinct name for everything and everything called by its name. 4. A certain use for everything and everything put to its use. Much time would be saved, many disputes avoided, numerous articles kept from being lost or injured, and constant confusion and disorder prevented by the strict observance of these four important rules. Dispense with ornaments altogether, rather than wear mock jewellery. Depend upon it, silvery hair is better adapted to the faded cheeks of middle age than our tresses of nut brown or coal black, or any of the mysterious shades produced by a dirty decoction called hair dye. The habitual use of very thin shoes invariably makes the feet tender, and a host of other inconveniences arise therefrom. If you are tempted to purchase tight shoes, don't, for several reasons, but one may suffice. You will not wear them more than twice. If you are not quite certain of the line between neatness and the reverse, be over-scrupulous about your undergarments. The edge of a soiled petticoat or the glimpse of a rent stocking is singularly disenchanting. Men of sense, I speak not of boys of 18 to 25 during their age of detestability, men who are worth the trouble of falling in love with, and the fuss and inconvenience of being married to, and to whom one might, after some inward conflicts, and a course perhaps of fasting and self-humiliation, submit to fulfil those ill-contrived vows of obedience, which are exacted at the altar. Such men want, for their wives, companions, not dolls, and women who would suit such men are just as capable of loving fervently, deeply, as the ringletina, full of song and sentiment, who cannot walk, cannot rise in the morning, cannot tie her bonnet strings, faints if she has to lace her boots, never in her life brushed out her beautiful hair, would not for the world prick her delicate finger with plain sewing, but who can work harder than a factory girl upon a lamb's wool shepherdess, dance like a dervish at balls, ride like a fox hunter, and whilst every breath of air gives her cold in her father's house, and she cannot think how people can endure this climate, she can go out to parties in February and March, with an inch of sleeve and half a quarter of bodice. All circumstances well examined, there can be no doubt Providence has willed that man should be the head of the human race, even as women at its heart, that he should be its strength, as she is its solace, that he should be its wisdom, as she is its grace, that he should be its mind, its impetus and its courage, as she is its sentiment, its charm, and its consolation. Too great an amelioration could not be effected, in our opinion, in the system generally adopted, which, far from correcting or even compensating the presumed intellectual inequality of the two sexes, generally serves only to increase it, by placing, for example, dancing and needlework at the extreme poles of female study, the one for its attraction and the other for its utility, and by not filling the immense interval with anything more valuable than mere monotonous, imperfect, superficial and totally unphilosophical notions, this system has made of the greater number of female seminaries establishments which may be compared alike to nursery grounds for coquettes and sempstresses. It is never remembered that in domestic life, conversation is of more importance than the needle or choreography. But a husband is neither a pasha nor a lazzarone, who must be perpetually intoxicated or unceasingly patched, that there are upon the conjugal dial many long hours of calm intimacy, of cool contemplation, of cold tenderness, and that the husband makes another home elsewhere if his own hearth offers him only silence, or what is 100 times worse, merely frivolous and monotonous discourse. Let the woman play the gossip at a given moment. That is all very well. Let her superintend the laundry or the kitchen at another. That is also very well. But these duties only comprise 2/3 of her mission. Ought care not to be taken that during the rest of her time she could also be capable of becoming to her husband a rational friend, a cheerful partner, an interesting companion, or at least an efficient listener whose natural intelligence, even if originally inferior to his own, shall by the help of education have been raised to the same level. Pascal says, kind words do not cost much. They never blister the tongue or lips. And we have never heard of any mental trouble arising from this quarter, though they do not cost much. 1. They help one's own good nature. Soft words soften our own soul. Angry words are fuel to the flame of wrath, and make it blaze more fiercely. 2. Kind words make other people good-natured. Cold words freeze people, and hot words scorch them, and bitter words make them bitter, and wrathful words make them wrathful. There is such a rush of all other kinds of words in our days, that it seems desirable to give kind words a change among them. There are vain words, and idle words, and hasty words, and spiteful words, and silly words, and empty words, and profane words, and boisterous words, and warlike words. Kind words also produce their own image on men's souls, and a beautiful image it is. They smooth and quiet and comfort the hearer. They shame him out of his sour, morose, unkind feelings. We have not yet begun to use kind words in such abundance as they ought to be used. A writer in the New York Observer, speaking of the necessity of guarding the tongue, says, "It is always well to avoid saying anything that is improper, but it is especially so before children. And here parents as well as others are often in fault. Children have as many ears as grown persons, and they are generally more attentive to what is said before them. What they hear, they are very apt to repeat, and as they have no discretion, and not sufficient knowledge of the world to disguise anything, it is generally found that children and fools speak the truth. See that boy's eyes glisten while you are speaking of a neighbour in a language you would not wish to have repeated. He does not fully understand what you mean, but he will remember every word, and it will be strange if he does not cause you to blush by the repetition. A gentleman was in the habit of calling at a neighbour's house, and the lady had always expressed to him the great pleasure from his calls. One day, just as she had remarked to him as usual her happiness from his visit, her little boy entered the room. The gentleman took him on his knee and asked, "Are you not glad to see me, George?" "No, sir," replied the boy. "Why not, my little man?" he continued. "Because mother don't want you to come," said George. "Indeed, how do you know that, George?" Here the mother became crimson and looked daggers at her little son, but he saw nothing, and therefore replied, "Because she said yesterday she wished that old bore would not call here again." That was enough. The gentleman's hat was soon in requisition, and he left with the impression that great is truth, and it will prevail. Another little child looked sharply in the face of a visitor, and being asked what she meant by it, replied, "I wanted to see if you had a drop in your eye. I heard mother say that you had frequently." A boy once asked of his father's guest who it was that lived next door to him, and when he heard his name, inquired if he was not a fool. "No, my little friend," replied the guest, "he is not a fool, but a very sensible man." "But why did you ask that question?" "Because," replied the boy, "mother said the other day that you were next door to a fool, and I wanted to know who lived next door to you." The best way to overcome the selfishness and rudeness you sometimes meet with on public occasions is by great politeness and disinterestedness on your part. Overcome evil with good, and you will satisfy your own conscience, and, perhaps, touch theirs. Contending for your rights stirs up the selfish feelings in others, but a readiness to yield them awakens generous sentiments and leads to mutual accommodation. The more refined you are, and the greater have been your advantages, the more polite and considerate you should be towards others. The more ready to give place to some poor uneducated girl who knows no better than to push herself directly in your way. Politeness is as necessary to a happy intercourse with the inhabitants of the kitchen as with those of the parlour. It lessens the pains of service, promotes kind feelings on both sides, and checks unbecoming familiarity. Always thank them for what they do for you, and always ask rather than command their services. Of late years, the wearing of jewellery in season and out of season, both by matrons and unmarried females, has increased vastly. It is an indication that the growing wealth of the people is not accompanied by a corresponding refinement, but that the love of vulgar show, the low pride of ostentation, takes the place of a pure and elevated taste. The emulation with fashionable dames nowadays, so far from being, as with the Spartan women, to excel each other in household virtues, is to wear the largest diamonds, and in this ambition they forget fitness, beauty, taste, everything but the mere vulgar desire to shine. To be gracefully and elegantly attired, in short, is secondary to the desire to be a sort of jeweller's walking show card. We do not oppose the use of diamonds and pearls altogether, as some persons might imagine from these remarks. A few diamonds judiciously worn look well on proper occasions on married women, but young girls rarely or never improve their appearance by the use of these dazzling jewels. And as a general rule, the simpler the costume of a woman in her teens, the better. Women are usually pretty, up to the age of 20 at least. Consequently, at this period of life, there are few whom an elaborate attire does not injure. A simple dress or a rosebud in the hair is frequently all that is required, and more only spoils that combination of youthful grace and modesty which it should be the highest ambition of the girl to attain. Because if she did not know it, It is her highest charm. Instead of this, however, we see gay females scarcely freed from the nursery, wearing enormous jewelled eardrops, or sporting on the finger a diamond ring as large as a sixpence. Sometimes, too, ladies pretending to be well-bred descend to receive a morning visitor of their own sex, glittering like a jeweller's case, with costly gems. In all this, we repeat, there is neither refinement nor elegance, but simply vulgar ostentation. Female dress has ceased to be a means of beautifying the person, or displaying the wearer's taste, and has become instead a mere brag of the husband's or father's wealth. A knowledge of domestic duties is beyond all price to a woman. Every one of the sex ought to know how to sew and knit, and mend, and cook and superintend a household. In every situation of life, high or low, this sort of knowledge is of great advantage. There is no necessity that the gaining of such information could interfere with intellectual acquirement, or even elegant accomplishment. A well-regulated mind can find time to attend to all. When a girl is 9 or 10 years old, she should be accustomed to take some regular share in household duties, and to feel responsible for the manner in which her part is performed, such as her own mending, washing the cups, and putting them in place, cleaning silver or dusting, and arranging the parlour. This should not be done occasionally, and neglected whenever she finds it convenient. She should consider it her department. When older than 12, girls should begin to take turns in superintending the household, making puddings, pies, cakes, and etc. To learn effectually, they should actually do these themselves, and not stand by and see others do them. Many a husband has been ruined for want of these domestic qualities in a wife, and many a husband has been saved from ruin by his wife being able to manage well the household concerns. It is a mark not only of ill breeding, but of positive want of feeling and judgment, to speak disparagingly of a physician to one of his patients. Many persons visiting an invalid friend will exclaim loudly against the treatment pursued, recommend a different doctor, and add to the sufferings of the patient by their injudicious remarks upon the medicines or practice used. It is too much the fashion in conversation to use exaggerated expressions which are opposed to truth, without the person employing them being aware of it, from the mere force of habit. Why need we say splendid for pretty, magnificent for handsome, horrid for unpleasant, immense for large, thousands or myriads for any number more than 2? This practice is pernicious, for the effect is to deprive the person who is guilty of it from being believed, when she is in earnest. No one can trust the testimony of an individual who, in common conversation, is indifferent to the import, and regardless of the value of words. Politeness is very essential to the right transaction of that great business of women's life, shopping. The variety afforded by the shops of a city renders people difficult to please, and the latitude they take in examining and taking the price of goods, which they have no thought of buying, is so trying on the patience of those who attend upon them, that nothing but the most perfect courtesy of demeanour can reconcile them to it. Some persons behave in shopping as if no one had any rights or any feelings but the purchasers, as if the sellers of goods were mere automatons, put behind the counter to do their bidding. They keep them waiting whilst they talk of other things with a friend, They call for various goods, ask the price and try to cheapen them, without any real intention of buying. A lady who wants decision of character, who hesitating and debating till the poor trader's patience is almost exhausted, will beg him to send the article to her house, for her to examine it there, and, after giving him all this trouble, she will refuse to purchase it, without any scruple or apology. Some think that they have a right to exchange articles at the place where they were bought, whereas that privilege should be asked as a favour only by a good customer, and then but rarely. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Good night, sleepyheads. Sweet dreams.